I don't think people realize we already have a lot of socialism. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, food stamps, veterans benefits, Pell Grants, COVID-era payments, farm subsidies, disability payments, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, corporate bailouts. All that is socialism, much of it appropriate to soften the edges of capitalism. But the DSA are radicals about this concept, and radical economic policy is always ineluctably married to radical social policy. Their platform, for example, calls for completely open borders. They're for what Biden was doing, but more.
Bernie Sanders, once seen as a challenger to the establishment, is now backing authoritarian measures. Bill Maher isn't holding back either. The sharp-witted comedian called out Sanders for his double standards, pointing out that capitalism had played a key role in his own rise. The pointed, unrelenting critique completely dismantled Sanders' socialist arguments. Let's dive right into the issue.
Democratic socialism is like a dating profile. Things look great until you meet up in the real world. For example, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor in the Oval Office last week. Bernie, AOC, Mandani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet.
Most people might shy away from Maher's reality check. Bernie Sanders, AOC, and Zoran Madani often cast themselves as harmless social democrats, yet their goals align much more closely with genuine socialism. For those unclear on the difference, here's a quick breakdown. Social democrats back a capitalist system with strong safety nets, where markets still operate freely, but the government steps in to protect the vulnerable and uphold fairness. Socialists, on the other hand, go further. They advocate giving the government full control over major industries, making them publicly owned or tightly regulated. Maher insists we can't ignore this critical ideological gap.
And this is again why people sometimes, I think, question some of what you're saying. This is a survey student loan forgiveness recipients. 73% of applicants say they are likely to spend their extra money on non-essential, including vacations, smartphone, drugs, and alcohol. They admitted that to the pollster.
Who is this pollster?
NBC News. 52% they are very likely to buy new clothing. 46% they would use the money for vacation and eat out at restaurants. This is why people have a thing about, I would never call it free money. Oh, I guess I just did.
That's the true heartbeat of America. The vast majority of Americans strongly resist any move toward a heavily controlled socialist system where the government provides essentials like food, independence, personal choice, and the ability to create and succeed on one's own are deeply valued. Even with its flaws, which Maher's research highlights, people continue to prefer capitalism over any form of government-mandated replacement. They favor reforms instead of outright control and gradual improvements rather than sweeping overhauls. Sanders and his supporters are unlikely to succeed because of this. While their goals may sound appealing from a podium, most Americans would clearly reject the results.
Increased military spending with very little discussion, I don't know if you know this, by $80 billion. Military industrial complex.
Including the Democrats.
Pardon me?
The Democrats vote for it too?
Yes, absolutely correct. Absolutely right.
But that's socialism, the military. That's crony socialism.
Well, that's
right?
Crony capitalism.
But the military isn't capitalism, that's the government.
No, but it's who owns the military industrial complexes. All right, but anyhow, So when you talk about giveaways, you have major corporations in this country that make billions in profit, don't pay a nickel in taxes. You have a generation, you talk about this younger generation right now. I got around the country and I talked to a lot of people. You know, I don't know anything about that poll, but I tell you, I've talked to nurses who are working their ass off, doing the right thing. They leave school $70,000 in that they can't afford now to get married and have children.
Exactly. Totalitarianism isn't the solution. Maher lays out the argument brilliantly. Bernie Sanders has legitimate concerns, highlighting some of the worst aspects of capitalism, but fixing those issues doesn't require dismantling the entire system. Instead of radical ideological shifts, practical steps can address soaring costs, corporate greed, and the financial strain on young people. Consider student loan debt. Wiping it out and shifting the cost to taxpayers who never attended college isn't fair or effective. A better approach is to tackle the system at its root, cap tuition increases. expand income-based repayment so graduates pay according to what they actually earn, and offer meaningful tax incentives to companies that help with loan repayment. This keeps accountability intact while easing the burden.
Economic policy is always ineluctably married to radical social policy. Their platform, for example, calls for completely open borders. They're for what Biden was doing, but more. You think you're going to win an election on that? This just seems like more extremism at a time when Americans are begging both parties, please, could just one of you act normal?
Maher continues to caution Democrats about the dangers of giving real authority to figures like Mamani and Sanders. He notes that America already operates several socialist-style programs, Social Security, Medicare, and public education, designed to ease financial pressures without undermining the broader capitalist framework. These safety nets exist to support people, not to replace private enterprise. Yet, Maher warns that the younger generation of self-styled social democrats isn't satisfied with this balance. They're advocating for far more radical changes that could push the country toward full socialism, with extensive government control and regulations that might weaken its ability to protect its own interests. He also points out that their proposals include significantly relaxed border controls, which critics argue could threaten basic security.
You think you're going to win an election on that? This just seems like more extremism at a time when Americans are begging both parties, please, could just one of you act normal? It's either defund the police or military in the streets. Either MAGA's crypto crony capitalism or city-run grocery stores. No, I don't want that. I want a Democrat who reassures me if you like your Whole Foods, you can keep your Whole Foods.
Maher delivers a clear and pointed warning to the DNC. If they continue down reckless ideological paths, they could be out of power for a long time. Socialism is the latest trend capturing attention, but as he observes, the party has become trapped in a cycle of chasing every new idea that excites activists. In the most recent election, the obsession with wokeness drove independents and moderates away. Now, the party's most vocal members are fervently pushing socialism, while everyday Americans grow frustrated with weak borders, rising costs, and cultural overreach. Yet the DNC continues prioritizing political ideologies that excite Twitter activists over practical governance, alienating the very voters they need. Maher cautions that if this continues, they shouldn't be surprised when elections they could have won slip away.
Lex Vanberger once said about Biden's presidency that, quote, nobody elected him to be FDR. They elected him to be normal. Normal! You know, at this year's DSA convention, or as it's commonly known, Comic-Con, get this, you had to submit a photo of a negative COVID test to get in 2025. Yeah, no one wants to do that again.
Maher warns that unless America returns to what he calls basic political normalcy, the Democratic Party risks losing any chance at winning another major election. He stresses that voters grow weary of cultural crusades, theatrical politics, and constant ideological shifts. And he isn't alone in this view. Many Democrats, including experienced DNC leaders, share the same concerns. The party has too often focused on symbolic battles and activist-driven fantasies rather than practical, results-oriented solutions. Maher argues that the DNC should prioritize issues that truly impact people's lives: affordable housing, border security, economic stability, public safety, and effective governance. Tangible outcomes matter far more than empty rhetoric in these areas. If the party fails to put substance over appearance, Maher believes it will keep alienating moderates and losing elections it ought to win.
These democratic socialists at another of their conventions, they were told to make jazz hands instead of clapping, lest some delegates suffer sensory overload. And also, and I'm not joking, they were told not to be wearing, any aggressive scents.
Please don't go into that space with anything that's like an aggressive scent, for instance, right? Because that's going to be difficult for people.
Oh, for sake. This is who the Democrats are thinking of following. Chuck Schumer ain't perfect, but at least he doesn't crumple into a heap when confronted with Chanel No. 5. You may now clap in the traditional way.
It appears that this new wave of socialist Democrats is essentially a mix of woke culture and far-left economics. Who else swaps traditional applause for odd, jazzy hand gestures, or whatever term they're using now? It comes across more like a carefully staged performance than a genuine political movement. Even their wardrobe choices seem intentionally symbolic, prioritizing ideological messaging over professionalism. This is what happens when wokeness and socialism merge into a confusing philosophy. Everyone avoids imaginary slights, and every action becomes a calculated gesture. Constant self-censorship, tiptoeing to prevent offense, demands confidence, awareness, and focus, and it's exhausting. While it may seem minor, many voters are writing off the movement entirely because of it.
When FDR was president, when Truman was president, even when JFK was president, you go out on the street and you say to people, which party represents the working class of America? Most people, I think, agree, would have said the Democratic Party.
Correct.
All right. Today you go out on the street and that is not the sentiment. In fact, the Republican Party probably has more adherents than the Democrats.
How did that happen?
I'll tell you how it happened. It happened because 30 years ago, the Democrats said, hey, Republicans are getting all this corporate money. We want it too. Let's go out and get it. And let's forget about the people who are working 50 or 60 hours a week. So you're sitting out there somewhere in the Midwest. You can't afford health care. Maybe your job went to China and you're earning half of what you used to make. Your kid can't afford to go to college.
That's why people aren't automatically turning to the Republican Party. The reality is more nuanced. The Democrats have pushed so far left that they've lost sight of what the average American truly cares about. They're more absorbed in identity debates, symbolic battles, and fringe cultural issues that don't meaningfully improve lives than in supporting the working class, which was historically their foundation. In doing so, they've let down the very people who once trusted them. Communities frustrated by crime, weak border enforcement, and underperforming public services, families struggling to make ends meet, and workers grappling with rising costs. Instead of addressing these challenges directly, the party chases validation from small online activist groups, mistaking social media praise for real political traction. It's not that Republicans are flawless, it's that Democrats have lost focus, common sense, and practicality.
Restore hope to the American people. Working class are the majority of people in this country. They are hurting. After 50 years of exploding technology, they're earning less than they did before. All right?
You sound like you're running again. No? Third
No,
time?
I'm just talking about the book here.
Third time the charm? People usually write a book when they're about to run.
No.
You're right, Bernie. Many of the issues you raise are real. Ordinary Americans are under pressure from all directions, and that cannot be denied. But embracing socialism or mixing it with woke culture is not the answer. In fact, combining the two would likely worsen the country's problems. Wokeness turns every interaction into a cultural minefield, discouraging honesty, while socialism concentrates power in the state, stifling innovation and limiting the freedoms that have fueled American prosperity for generations. Together, they create a society where symbolic gestures outweigh real governance and ideological purity dominates. Instead of tackling rising costs, soaring student debt, and a shrinking middle class, these approaches saddle the nation with constant cultural policing and economic stagnation. Americans do not want to live under government-controlled behavior or constantly tiptoe around ideological sensitivities. They want practical solutions, laws and policies that strengthen the economy, protect individual freedoms, and empower working people. Woke socialists offer none of this. Maher has issued a clear warning. America needs real solutions, not ideological experiments. While socialism and woke culture may appeal to some, they risk alienating ordinary citizens and threatening the freedoms that define the nation. The Democratic Party should focus on policies that genuinely improve people's lives, jobs, security, education, and economic stability, rather than chasing symbolic battles. Until they do, the working class will continue turning to alternatives that prioritize substance over spectacle, putting the party's electoral future in jeopardy. That wraps up today's video. Click like and subscribe to this channel for more content like this.